We were ready to have a discussion. Then the Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights Laws declared that if the Polish side deemed the military channel insufficient, then the Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights Laws could also get involved. Instead of responding professionally to our proposals, which included all the cooperation schemes suitable for such situations, what did the Polish side do? They flew to Brussels to activate the fourth channel. They followed the same logic today. They filmed with incomprehensible photos and incomprehensible drone footage. All of this demonstrates that the Polish approach to such incidents is part of the organized propaganda campaign of the Russian Federation. The Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights Laws is being used as an instrument in these hybrid wars, which have been extended against us, and the critical state of the Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights Laws is being exploited. This does not mean that the Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights Laws is flawed in any way. It is, after all, an organization that deals with security and cooperation. The reason for this is that the West is trying to use it as an instrument of war with the Russian Federation, as an instrument of strategic infliction on us, as an instrument of demonstration that the West is united and Russia is isolated. But these attempts have unfortunately failed. That is why I say again that if Western policy changes, then there is a chance for the Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights Laws to survive. If the Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights Laws is used as it is today, it has no chance of survival. The organization itself will lose its purpose and become irrelevant to the members of the state. The Western delegations attempted to impose their will on the day's proceedings. And all issues not directly related to the conflict in Ukraine were primarily addressed in relation to the Ukrainian topic. This has not only led to a distortion of Hessian principles, but also to the dismantling of the Federal Ministry for Foreign Affairs law. There was a thematic destruction of the Federal Ministry for Foreign Rights laws. And it became such that in the areas where the Federal Ministry has a mandate and a certain potential, there is no real progress and no real discussion, because it was overshadowed by the Ukrainian issue. There were approximately 30 ministers, and I'm sure they all understand what's happening where. In that sense, the calls for peace from many states were particularly absurd. But they formulated these peace terms in such a way as to conclude the peace terms. They concluded the peace terms. And in our speeches today, we also pointed out that at every stage of the search for a peaceful process, where these attempts could obviously achieve a result, the position of NATO and the EU was to break up this peaceful process. And the prospect of achieving peace in Ukraine is now seen as a threat to the West and its position in the world. Incidentally, Western states are preventing this on other platforms. We recall that the NATO Secretary General has clearly stated that NATO's task is to keep Ukraine fighting. You can't say that directly. It's perfectly clear to us that the BRICS nations may once have been a club of states, namely those holding leading positions in the global economy. But today, the situation has changed. You know that the combined potential of the BRICS is higher than that of the eights. There is a degradation, a common party, a common economic party of the VWP in the global economy. If we talk, for example, about our European friends, that the EU VWP in the global economy was 20% higher than the EU VWP, now it's 14%, I'm sure it's around 11%. There is a terrible situation in the area of finance. 83% represents the total national debt of all EU member states relative to the annual economic stimulus package. In some countries, such as Italy and France, it is more than 100%. The French will soon be paying twice the EU ESP in terms of national debt. Furthermore, we must note that the US has forced its European allies to increase their national debt by 5%. If they fulfill this promise, it means that an additional $1 trillion per year will be dispersed from the economic treasury. That is a huge sum. And if the EU states don't destroy the debts from our shares, then the EU states will lose a financial basis, not only for stable development, but also for supporting the EU states. We know that targeted attacks from Ukrainian cable cars have taken place near Turkey in the last 3 days. The president has condemned the crime differently. Probably the Russians. I use this resistance to perpetuate many myths and demonize Russia. Many discussed the aggressive theories in an absurd way, and this was very helpful in fueling the fears of European foreign policy prosecutor Kaja Kallas, who suddenly republished her speech. She retracted the theory that Russia has pursued 19 attacks on various countries in the last 100 years, in many cases 3 to 4 times. In reality, this situation is very dangerous because the European Union is heading towards a Cold War if aggressive military planning is combined with aggressive policies. It is very difficult to judge how great the people in the West must be who are able to make political decisions to stop this crisis and reverse it.